We are back following day 3 of ACC Kickoff. Didn't call it ACC Media Day this time. I'll tell you what, we are happy to announce that every single team that showed up today is bigger, faster, stronger, has more depth, and is ready to compete for a championship. Pretty incredible stuff.
Every single one of them. It's like someone waved a magic wand over the ACC. And it was interesting because we heard that from almost every single team.
Yeah.
And, that's part of talking season, though, right?
Yes.
Everybody's better, but you got to put it on the grass.
Yeah.
There's a famous quote from Warren Buffett that I love. When the tide goes out, you find out who's swimming naked.
So, I never heard that one before. Okay.
And so I think with this,
yeah,
when the tide going out is when the ball hits the field.
So I think I don't have a notepad this time.
Right.
I think we're just going to go off of what we saw today. And the first thing that I'll say, there's no other place to start than Bill Belichick. Couple of things. First and foremost, it is still surreal that he is a coach in this conference.
Yeah.
It was hilarious to see media members freaking out, myself included. I mean,
Right.
when he's walking down the hallway, it's pretty wild. And just the gravitas that he carries. So I know that you were waiting in the breakout room when he was in the main room. First of all, the players take the stage through the doors that everybody else came through. They sat down and everybody shut up. It was completely silent. And then the Trip, who's working at the lectern, said, we're about to get started. Anybody have any with Coach? And then we're going to get started with the players, but Coach Belichick wasn't there. And then Bill, out of nowhere, back left of the room, comes in, walks in, almost in like a ominous way. And
Like
then
Secret Service brought him
exactly,
in.
takes the lecture and takes questions. But what I thought was really interesting, and I'm curious how he was in the breakout room, was Bill has had an interesting relationship with the media in the NFL.
Yeah.
And he was really, really generous with his answers with everybody, which I thought was pretty interesting because I was expecting him to go off on some people and he didn't do it. So how was the breakout room?
It was interesting because first off, I got to say, I've been coming here. This is my 3rd year. I've never seen it even probably half that full.
Okay.
There were more cameras than you could count. It was amazing. They had to actually bring the SID in to kind of run it because they didn't want it to just be an all-out frenzy. And there was one thing today that I will probably take to my grave forever is that I saw Bill Belichick laugh and tell a joke, and it was amazing. But I think you're right. It's just kind of the aura of him, and actually growing up, or my wife, she's a Patriots fan.
Okay.
So this is kind of, last year I told her, it's like, okay, I get to talk to Bill O'Brien. Now it's Bill Belichick, and it's like, we're
Is it going to be Tom Brady next year?
We're Matt Patricia away from a New England reunion. So it was interesting, but, I think that's good for the conference. It's just the draw that he brings, the amount of attention that it was. I think it's good for the conference, and I think they're doing a good job of leveraging that because they know, it's fun now, but that experiment has to work.
100%. What's interesting, a couple of things was I didn't really know what to expect from people being here. Number one, everybody knew when to show up, like 15 minutes before they were going. That's when it got packed. It wasn't packed when you walked in. It wasn't. There were more people, but it wasn't packed. And then when when Duke finished up and then North Carolina was up next, everybody was everywhere. And there was a line of people literally waiting for him to come out of the bathroom with cameras. Like he had ran into the bathroom and then everybody's setting up their cameras. He starts walking down the hallway, coming out of the bathroom. Somebody just yells down the hallway, "Here he comes!" It was really like the Pope was coming out, which was really interesting. I also thought it was funny that Dabo and Bill had a nice little friendship off. So Dabo starts the morning off by saying, "We've learned so much from Bill Belichick." And then when we were in the large room, somebody mentioned that to Bill. And then Bill said, "We're actually learning everything from Davos." They were doing like the Spider-Man meme pointing at each other thing. I love you more. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. But what other takeaways did you come with from today?
Dabo is man, love him or hate him, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Right? And he's really forthcoming with his answers. And I thought he said a lot of stuff about their team and the expectations that they have this year and how they can handle that.
Yep.
It sounds like he knows they have a good team. But they learned a lot last year from that Texas game in the playoffs. They learned a lot from the opener against Georgia, where they have to do better and be more consistent throughout the season to live up to the expectations. But expectations are not new to that program, obviously. And so I think they know what they have there. And then, with Bill Belichick, it was interesting because there was a ton of questions there. And it's just really more about, I think, getting acclimated to the college game.
Right.
And I think that's something that's new to him. But We talked about it on the recording we did yesterday, where that schedule sets him up to have success in year one. Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting to see that whole storyline unfold because, like I said, man, it's got to work.
It's interesting, though, to say in year one, and I was curious how much he would talk about the future of the program. And he went out of his way to talk about, the 2026 class when he was talking up there. So, again, Bill's hasn't said a lot of substantive things for you to believe that he will stay or he will go. He's actually said more to lead you to believe that he will stay. Yeah. But the national media, the local media that is outside of Chapel Hill is all trying to convince you that he's going to leave. So really, I think as a observer, I won't say fan, but I'm a fan of being able to see how this is going to play out. I have no expectations on wins or losses or anything. I just know it's going to be entertaining.
It is.
Period.
It is. And we had talked about yesterday how their schedule sets them up to how are you going to get them on TV?
Yeah, if you look at the schedule, you have the TCU game week 1. It's interesting that TCU were they Deion's first game? Did Deion's first game that he coached in was against TCU and they won?
They were
the year after they were in the national championship.
And then they ended up finishing terrible, so they got, kind of a thing for beating a ranked team who ended up, I think, going 5-7.
Right, so TCU was the first team to play against Deion. They'll be the first team to play against Bill Belichick. Yeah. That's interesting. I'm surprised nobody's pointed that out. But you have that game, and then really until you get to Clemson, there's not a game that is going to be on national television. They might muscle him into national television in some spots, but it's going to be
was interesting that I learned from a UNC friend of mine. He said that, because we talked about yesterday how it's really kind of interesting that you have UNC going on the road to UNC Charlotte.
Yeah.
And Charlotte is doing some work on their stadium right now, and so he said that they tried to actually move the game to Panther Stadium here in Charlotte, but because of the Duke's Mayo kickoff, they weren't able to make that happen.
I wasn't even thinking about that one because I was ticked off to hear that Duke is going to Tulane to play at Tulane. So I really, really implore and wish that the ACC would stop traveling to these Group of 5 schools because it's just setting yourself up to look awful.
It's one of those. It's one of those things where it does you no good.
Yeah.
Because if you lose, it's a black eye, and if you win, it's like
nobody cares.
You beat it. Like Miami when they went to App State. Like yes, you went and won that game. Big time. I think it was like 45-10, but why are we – and this is something, side note, this is something that Florida State's AD, I believe it was him, who made a comment about the conference has to get away from playing road games at G5 schools.
I completely agree.
You can't herald yourself as a top-tier conference. Mm-hmm. How many other conferences do that?
There's no – is this breaking news? What do we got? Here, toss it. What do we got? North Carolina is exploring a potential move from the ACC to the SEC. Per Inside Carolina – it's from On3? Wow.
Just broke.
Wow.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. That is... Okay. I don't even feel prepared to give intelligible comments on that.
But you know what? We had heard through the whole process, right? We had heard that UVA and UNC were kind of the apple of the eye of the SEC. They wanted both of those schools because when it comes to Florida State, we were kind of, a lot of people thought we were a natural fit in the SEC, but I think we're kind of working ourselves more towards the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. But it was the UNC UVA that were really kind of the SEC made it known that that's who they wanted.
Man, I'm kind of at it.
And of course it breaks right now, right after ACC
Well,
Media
you know
Days.
what happened? This is not even close to the same gravity, but yesterday when Georgia Tech was here for Media Day, they actually extended their offensive coordinator and made him the highest paid, I believe he's the highest paid offensive coordinator in program history, and it was the first time in program history they were paying two coordinators in 7 figures. That is huge news. I don't know what that means. I don't know what is exploring the possibility. I think you could say that every team would love the opportunity to explore the opportunity to move to the SEC.
Right.
But we will see. So on ACC Media Day, any last takeaways that you have? I'll just a couple rapid fire that I have. I was really impressed with Manny Diaz at the stage. I thought he's really well spoken. I think that he has a very clear vision for what his program is supposed to look like. I think the one point that I really enjoyed that he made was he said, when you're talking to prospective student athletes, the interest is coming to Duke to get a degree and to prepare yourself for the next phase of life. So that was always a given.
Yeah.
His goal and where he believes the program is trending is that you can also go to Duke to go to the NFL and to compete for championships. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I talked to him in the breakout room. And first off, I love talking to Manny Diaz because he's a football guy.
Yeah.
You know, you start throwing some stuff out at him, and he just loves to talk football. But he did talk about that. He said how Duke is also – it's an everything school. You can go there for basketball. They compete in baseball. They compete in all these other sports. They finished, I think he said, top 10 in the Directors Cup.
Yep.
So, you know, and I talked to him. I said, you know, Manny, Duke is a program that's not really Duke of old. You've had 8+ wins the last 3 years. You're setting a new standard there. And how do you take that next step?
Right.
You know, to being able to compete, which I think is really an overall narrative for the ACC right now. And then you make a great point with Georgia Tech about investing in your program.
Sure.
Because I think what you want to see from a lot of these ACC teams from, you know, maybe the mid to lower tier levels to where you need to see them make a sizable investment in their programs if you're going to be considered one of those top 3 premier conferences. And I think that's really what you want to see the rest of the schools make that investment so you can be a deeper conference. But, you know, now more than ever, that means something because it directly affects your revenue with the success and the brand initiative.
Right. I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see how it all plays out, and especially, you know, a lot of people have their eyes on a Duke and have their eyes on, you know, Duke is in one situation and Virginia is in the same situation where it's like, how much are you actually willing to invest in football over basketball? How much are you, North Carolina is another example. How much are you willing to invest in football versus investing in basketball? So it's going to be interesting to see how that rounds out. I will say, as a outsider, we can close with this unless you had something else. Any thoughts on Virginia Tech's time today?
You know, man, first off, I like Brent Pry.
Okay.
He's a guy. He's a dude's dude, right? And he
wears his heart on his sleeve for sure.
He does, and he will shoot you straight.
Yep.
I was surprised at some of the answers we got, but he's a great interview. He kind of leads you into the inside of the program, and he's easy to root for. He's easy to cheer for. Like, I want him to have success. I want Virginia Tech to be successful because it's good for the conference, and he's an easy guy to root for. But he talked about how, you know, they're closer than they've ever been. This is the closest Virginia Tech has been to what he wants them to be since
closest to the vision that he had for Virginia Tech when taking the job.
But, you know, I think what comes with that when you make statements like that are expectations.
Sure.
And so now you have to go back it up.
Well, here's the thing. There expectations or pressure, either one, it's there regardless, right?
Yeah.
So saying whatever you wanted to say. I also wanted to say this. Kelvin Gilliam was amazing on the stage. He was actually, I think, the best on stage. I went up to him after and I said, man, do you want to be a coach? He says, everybody keeps telling me that. And I told him when he leaned back and put his hand in his pocket and started like running court, he was really impressive up there. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. We actually talked about that. We were like, he might have been the best spoken one of the day.
He was really, really, really good. Another common theme of ACC Kickoff today and yesterday, the lights were too bright. I think there are going to be plenty of memes of coaches like getting up there and being like, whoa.
You know, and it's funny, we took some pictures on the stage at the podium yesterday, and they are intense.
They are?
Can you see? You can't see a thing.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe something to fix for next year. Something to fix for next year. Let's get back to 4 days, not 3.
Yeah,
because at the end of the day, it's a little bit of slog.
It is a lot.
But man, this was fun. I enjoyed doing this. It was good
last
stuff.
thing for you here.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a more important week 1 for the conference?
No, I've talked about this multiple times on my podcast. You cannot have a red wedding situation week 1. You are going to basically put yourself in a situation where you can look. You are either going to put yourself in a situation where you need to be proven wrong that you don't deserve to have multiple bids. If you do well, you will be in a position to have multiple bids. Or you will put yourself in a position where there's no chance you're getting multiple bids based upon what happened in week 1. And the ACC just dealt with this in basketball. They went out and they dropped the ball in non-conference play, and then they had a historically bad year of how many teams were in the field for March Madness. So I am of the belief, you know, there's an argument to be made for people that say, why even play challenging out-of-conference games? My pushback to that is if you are in the Big Ten or the SEC, you can make that point. As a viewer, I hate it, but I understand from that standpoint. If you're in the Big 12 or if you're in the Big 12 or the ACC, you have to do that, or you're not going to have a way to really make the case that you deserve to have multiple teams in.
Yeah, and I actually asked a lot of coaches that. I said, hey, with some of these big opening games that we got here, during a time when you see like an Indiana canceling games, I said, is that something that you're in favor of, to where it's like, let's stop talking about this conference is this and this conference is that. Let's just go settle it on the field.
Yep.
And a lot of them were in favor of that. Obviously, Manny Diaz was one that I asked, and he talked about it. He said, well, you have to also keep the scheduling model in mind of the current, of how things go, right? You got the risk reward of that. But it is big for the conference, and you know, to be able to show that. And I think you bring up a great point right now, where you're fighting to hang on to the multi-bids and to not get, you know, these two with 4, and now you only have 2, and to kind of get left out in the cold.
Right.
This is your opportunity. You clean house on week 1. You have, if Jim Phillips is willing to go to bat for the conference in the public eye, that would be something that you could really like hold a championship belt up and just say, hey, look, we are just as good as these other teams. But like you said, if you get your clock clean week 1, you just kind of have to kind of fade off into the distance and hope things work out over the course of the season.
And to that point, you know, it's not the coach's fault because they're being asked the questions. But we probably had 3 or 4 coaches over the course of the week be asked, why is the ACC a multi-bid league? And if I was answering that question, I would say, honestly, if you want my honest answer, I have no idea if we should be a multi-bid league. Like every single year, one league can be better than the other one. Like you have to go out and you have to prove it. The fact that the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, or the Big 12 can come out right now in July and say, we deserve this many teams into the playoff is preposterous, because you have no idea how you stack up against these other teams in these other conferences. So to the idea of like posturing to earn something is crazy to me, and that's why I hope in the long term we keep these out-of-conference games. I look at Virginia Tech's future schedule. In like 2035, 2036, like all of these future years, we're supposed to go to Notre Dame, we're supposed to go to Ole Miss, we're supposed to go to Alabama, Arizona, BYU. I hope those games happen, but to me, unfortunately, I would be shocked if those games do end up happening because of the trend of just making your schedule soft. Last thing on that, though, ABC, ESPN, and Fox are not going to put up with that. They're not going to be willing to say, I will pay you hundreds of $1 million for your product when 3 or 4 weeks of the 12 of your product is crap. So I think that they'll push back on that.
And that's exactly what we saw with the ACC leveraging the Notre Dame thing to say, you got to play our top brands more often. But no, I do think you're right. And when you look at these, I think, yes, the ACC, you know, Rhett Lashley talked about this. This is the conference that's second in national championships. It's just, for me, the biggest question was the ACC versus some of the others, because I think you can compete. It's how many teams do you have that in any given year can sneak up and win a national championship? That, I think, is where the ACC needs to push the investment into all of its football programs. So you have these teams that can go from, okay, well, we're just a middle-tier ACC team to now we're a national contender and be able to win on the national stage in these big games. But like you said, I don't think the networks are just going to take kindly to canceling all these big games, whether you have a big conference schedule or not. You got to. I'd rather see it on the field. And I think there is risk reward because, you know, we have Bama, Georgia. We'll see if those Georgia games actually happen. They might be conference games. Who knows? But I think with that, you still have at-large bids out there. So a big non-conference win can still maybe even sneak you into the playoffs. So I think it's important to have those big matchups.
That's going to do it from day 3 and the final day of ACC Kickoff. Looking forward to getting together. We'll do some more stuff over the course of the season. I know that we play each other in November 15th.
I'm excited about
November 15th. So Plant the Spear, Sons of Saturday. It's always good, man. Looking forward to it. We'll do some stuff again soon.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.